Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice, where we take up the questions from the Hindu and the Indian Express and curate the question as per the demands of civil services prelims. The topics for the discussion have been listed on your screen.
Now, moving on to the first article of the day that has appeared on the page 10 of the Hindu, basically talks about the demand for the Ladakh to be included under the 6th schedule. Now, in 2019, the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated to the union territories of J&K and that of Ladakh without a legislative assembly. After the special status of Ladakh was removed, several political groups based in Ladakh have been demanding that land, employment, and cultural identity of Ladakh should be protected under the 6th schedule. Now, UPSC under the Polity section has continuously asked questions related to various schedules and particularly asked the question related to the 5th and 6th schedule in the year 2015. So, a question on 6th schedule can be framed in this regard, where the practice question says, with reference to the 6th schedule, consider the following statement. The first statement here is, it deals with administration of tribal areas of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and that of Manipur. Now, this statement is incorrect, as the tribal areas in the four states, that is the Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and that of Mizoram, have been constituted as autonomous district under the 6th schedule. Now, the second statement here says the autonomous district fall outside the executive authority of the state government. Now, this statement is again incorrect, as the tribal areas in four states, that is Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, or Mizoram, which can be also sufficed with the acronym that is TAMEMI, Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya, and Mizoram. The tribal areas in these states have been constituted as autonomous districts, but they do not fall outside the executive authority of the state concerned. Moving on to the third statement, it says the governor is empowered to organize or reorganize the autonomous district. Now, this statement is correct, as the governor is empowered to organize and reorganize the autonomous district. Thus, he can increase or at the same time decrease the areas and change their names or define their boundaries and the powers so on. The question further says which of the following statements given above is or are correct, and as only third statement is correct, the correct code for the given question will be option B. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option A. Now, moving to the next article of the day that has appeared in the Hindu on page number 2, basically talks about the swim swap fraud that is in news, wherein a businessman was duped of 50 lakhs of the rupees. Now, the article further says that the 50 lakh rupees were due from a businessman through a series of missed calls. Adding to that, no OTP or personal details were shared. Now, UPSC in the previous year under the Science and Technology section has been asking questions related to various types of malware and other cybersecurity issues, and thus we need to understand the swim swap fraud, and a question in this regard can be framed. UPSC in 2018 has asked questions related to WannaCry, Petya, Eternal Blue that was in news at that point of time. The practice question in this regard says, consider the following statement about swim swap. The first statement here is, under swim swap, fraudster managed to get a new SIM card issued against victim's registered mobile number. Now, this statement is correct. We'll first try to understand what is basically swim swap. A swim swap fraud is an account takeover scam in which criminals gain access to the victim's phone, and they manage to get personal information through phishing, which involves fake mails, wishing, which involves fraudulent phone calls, and smishing, which involves fake text messages. Now, they will use all the personal information to create a fake ID and impersonate that victim and trick the telecom service provider to issue a duplicate SIM card, mostly on the pretext of losing the phone or the old SIM card getting damaged. Once this duplicate SIM starts functioning, the original SIM gets blocked. With the help of duplicate SIM, they can get a OTP, that is the one-time password, and other alerts required to carry out financial transactions through a victim's bank account. The second statement here says, not sharing one-time password can easily prevent the fraud from taking place. Now, this statement is incorrect, as we have seen in the explanation of SIM swap fraud that a duplicate SIM is being generated, and the OTP and the required details are shared on that duplicate SIM while the original SIM card gets blocked. Further, the bank says SIM swap is possible because of weak two-factor authentication that enables scammers to access details from telecom service providers. And as an alternative to this, the bank suggests that the end user should alert the mobile service provider if there is no service or signal or the bulk notification that looks suspicious or one is not able to access its personal account in this case scenario. The question further says which of the following statement given above is or are correct, and as only statement 1 is correct, the correct option for the given question will be option A. Further, the correct option for the previous year question is option C. Now moving on to the next article of the day that has featured in the Hindu on page 14, basically talks about the real rates and the inflation. The article says that Indian real interest rate have turned positive after the headline retail inflation has eased below 6% for the first time this year. Now UPSC under the economic section have continuously asked questions related to both inflation and that of interest rates and the changes made by RBI in the repo rate as well and its impact on the market. As it was also seen in the year 2022 when UPSC asked about the inflation index model. A practice question thus in this regard can be made. The practice question here says positive real interest rate and negative real interest rate are often seen in news can be defined as difference between lending and borrowing rate of interest rate by a commercial bank. Now this is incorrect. Higher and lower interest rates charged by the World Bank on direct loan. Now this is again incorrect. Inflation adjusted policy rates of the Reserve Bank of India. Now this statement is correct. We'll try to understand what basically is the real interest rate. A real interest rate is an interest rate that has been adjusted to remove the effects of inflation. Once it is adjusted or the effects of inflation are removed, it reflects the real cost of funds to a borrower and the real yield to a lender. If a real interest rate is positive, it means you have much more purchasing power. If the real interest rate on the other hand, if it is negative, then it means you have the less purchasing power, at least when it comes to investment and earning interest on your money. Now, if the inflation is above the policy rate of the RBI, that is, inflation is more than the repo rate, it shows negative real interest rate. While if the inflation is below the policy rate of the RBI, it shows positive real interest rate. Moving on to the previous year question, the correct answer for the previous year question is option A. Moving on to the next article of the day that has appeared on page 11 of the Hindu talks basically about the OIC, that is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Now India has condemned the OIC and had said that it has lost its credibility. The comment from the Ministry of External Affairs came in the backdrop after the OIC Secretary General Hussein Brahim Taha visited the line of control from the Pakistani side and was briefed by the situation by the Pakistani military. Further, the ministry exclaimed that any attempt of interference and meddling in the India's internal affairs by the OIC and its Secretary General is completely unacceptable to that of India. Now, a question based on international organizations have been asked by UPSC previously, and a question in this regard can be framed on the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. As UPSC in the 2016 has asked questions related to various organizations that were in news, and such a question was also seen in the year 2016. The practice question in this regard says, consider the following statement regarding OIC, that is Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The first statement here is the organization was set up in 1969 after the summit in Morocco. Now this statement is correct as the OIC was established at the 1969 summit that happened in Rabat city of Morocco. Today, the organization has 57 countries and India is not a member to the organization. Further, the objective of the organization is to establish solidarity among the member states, support restoration and complete sovereignty and territorial integrity, and combat defamation of Islam world over. Moving on to the second statement, it says the decision regarding membership and granting of observer status are taken by majority decision. Now this statement is incorrect. There is a difference in the decision making process regarding the membership and other decisions. The decision regarding the membership and the granting of observer status are taken by consensus. And this was the prime reason behind India being not granted the membership in 1969, as there was a opposition from Pakistan and the consensus was not reached to include India despite having second largest Muslim population. The other decision making at the OIC is done by a minimum quorum of two-thirds members that should be present, and the decision is first tried to be reached through consensus. If the other decisions that are need to be reached are not able to be made by consensus, then the decisions are made by a two-thirds majority. Now we need to understand this because UPSC has been going forward from the traditional question where it asked about the international organization and India being a part of it or not a part of it to deeper understanding of the organization. Further, the third statement here says the headquarters of the organization is located in Jeddah. Now, this statement is correct. The headquarters of the organization today is located in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Moving on with the question, it says which of the following statements are correct? And as only statement 1 and 3 are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option B. Further, the correct answer for the previous year question is also option B. Moving on to the next article of the day that has appeared on page 11 of the Hindu basically talks about the Sri Aurobindo, wherein the article says PM Narendra Modi hailed Sri Aurobindo's life and work as reflecting the oneness and the cultural preeminence of the country. Now, UPSC in the previous year under the history section has asked questions related to various personalities that were involved in the Indian national movement and also at the same time have framed questions regarding their contribution to the national movement and the literary works that they have done. And such a question was also seen in year 2019 where UPSC asked about the persons and the position held by them. Our practice question in this regard on Aurobindo Ghosh can be framed. The practice question here says, consider the following statements regarding Aurobindo Ghosh. The first statement here is, he gave the theory of nationalism which was based on Vedanta philosophy. Now this statement is correct. Aurobindo was a yogi, philosopher and was associated with the Indian national movement. Further, Aurobindo held various administrative posts in Baroda and Calcutta and took part in the freedom struggle between 1902 and 1910. And during his time, it was Sri Aurobindo who gave the theory of nationalism which was based on the Vedanta philosophy. Moving on to the second statement, it says he was one of the accused in the Meerut conspiracy case. Now this statement is incorrect as during his part in the freedom struggle from 1902 to 1910, he was framed under the charges made under the Alipur bomb case or the Alipur conspiracy case and not that of Meerut conspiracy case. The third statement here says he is credited with publishing Arya magazine and the Savitri poem. Now this statement is again correct as he is credited with publishing Arya magazine between 1914 to 1921, a periodic magazine which included philosophical messages. At the same time, he is also credited with publishing poem Savitri that had around 24,000 lines. Further going a little deeper and knowing much more about the Aurobindo, he is also associated with the English newspaper called Bande Mataram. Further, Aurobindo also developed a kind of yoga that was known as the internal yoga. He founded a community of spiritual seekers which seek to place as Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Also, in its part to the contribution towards the national movement, Aurobindo Ghosh played an instrumental role in setting up of Anushilan Samiti and at the same time he even attended the Congress sessions. The question further says which of the following statement is or are correct, and as only statement 1 and 3 are correct, the correct code for the given question is option C. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option D. Moving on to the last article of the day that has appeared on the Indian Express on page 15 basically talks about the fusion energy and the breakthrough that was received from the scientists in the United States for the first time where they have able to achieve net gain in energy from a nuclear fusion reaction and is seen as a big step forward in the decades-old endeavor Moving on to the last article of the day that has appeared in 2016, where UPSC asked about the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor and the possible outcome of it. Now, practice question in this regard says, consider the following statement. The ITER, that is International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, is experimenting to generate net energy from fusion of isotopes of helium. Now, this statement is incorrect, as the ITR is experimenting to generate net energy from the fusion of isotopes of hydrogen and not that of helium. The second statement here says a nuclear fusion reaction generates 100 times as much energy as nuclear fission reaction. Now, this statement is again incorrect, as the nuclear fusion generates only 3 to 4 times more energy when compared with the nuclear fission reaction. Moving on to the third statement, it says currently nuclear fusion energy is not used anywhere in the world for commercial purposes, and this statement is correct, as nuclear fusion energy, which is considered to be most dependent in the near future, is not produced today anywhere in the world for the commercial purposes. The question for the same which of the following statement given above is or are correct, and as only statement 3 is correct, the correct code for the given question will be option C. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option D.